The morning frost clung stubbornly to the hospital windows, painting delicate, icy patterns that glittered in the soft winter sunlight. Sophia Andrews, a nurse in her mid-30s with a heart as warm as her perpetual smile, tightened the red scarf around her neck as she stepped into St. Grace Hospital for her shift. It was Christmas Eve, and though the wards bustled with patients and nurses, there was a palpable air of longing for the festivities beyond these sterile walls. Sophia had been a nurse for over a decade. She found her calling not in the rush of adrenaline that came with emergencies, but in the quiet moments, the gentle words of comfort, the hand she held for frightened patients, and the joy of making someone smile in their darkest hour. This Christmas, she wanted to do something special, something that reminded the patients and staff that even here, amidst the hum of machines and the scent of antiseptic, the spirit of the holidays could thrive. In her tiny apartment the night before, Sophia had baked dozens of cookies, gingerbread men with jaunty icing smiles, sugar cookies shaped like snowflakes, and soft, spiced snickerdoodles. She had stayed up late, carefully packing them into small gift boxes, each tied with a bright ribbon. Each box bore a handwritten note: "Merry Christmas. Wishing you warmth, joy, and a speedy recovery. Love, Nurse Sophia." As her shift began, Sophia donned her scrubs and set off on her rounds with the cart of cookies. The patients' faces lit up as she entered their rooms. For Mr. Carlson, who had been grumbling about missing his grandchildren's visit due to his knee surgery, the cookies brought a rare smile. For little Emily, just 7 years old and battling a stubborn pneumonia, the gingerbread man seemed to dance as she held it aloft with a giggle. Even the stoic Mrs. Patel, who rarely spoke, patted Sophia's hand and murmured, "Thank you, dear." But Sophia's gifts weren't limited to the patients. She made sure to leave a box for the custodial staff, the overworked interns, and even Dr. Hayes, whose gruff demeanor had earned him the nickname the Iceberg. By the end of the day, the cart was empty, and the hospital buzzed with a warmth that hadn't been there before. That evening, Sophia finished her shift with tired feet but a light heart. As she bundled up to leave, the head nurse, Nancy, stopped her by the exit. "Sophia," she said, her eyes twinkling, "you've been a blessing to this place. Merry Christmas." She handed Sophia a small gift bag containing a hand-knitted scarf. It was a simple gesture, but it filled Sophia with gratitude. She walked home in the falling snow, her heart full, unaware that the seeds of her kindness were about to blossom in ways she couldn't imagine. On Christmas morning, Sophia was back at the hospital. She didn't have to work that day, but she knew many of her patients would be spending the holiday alone, and she wanted to visit. As she entered the ward, she noticed an unusual buzz of excitement. Patients and staff alike greeted her with smiles, and there was a stack of envelopes on the nurse's station counter, each bearing her name. Curious, Sophia opened the first one. Inside was a card from the custodial team, thanking her for her kindness and including a gift card for her favorite coffee shop. The next envelope held a handwritten note from Mrs. Patel, who had arranged for a box of Indian sweets to be delivered to Sophia's apartment. One by one, Sophia opened the cards, each containing heartfelt messages of gratitude and small tokens of appreciation. By the time she finished, her eyes were brimming with tears. But the surprises didn't end there. As Sophia moved down the hall, visiting patients, she was stopped by Emily's parents. They handed her a large envelope and insisted she open it immediately. Inside was a letter explaining that they had started a fundraiser in her honor, inspired by the joy she had brought to Emily and the other patients. The fundraiser had been shared on social media and had already raised over $5,000 for hospital equipment and patient care initiatives. The days following Christmas were filled with more surprises. Word of Sophia's selfless act spread, and people from the community began to contribute to the fundraiser. Local bakeries and businesses offered to collaborate with Sophia for future holiday initiatives, and a local news station ran a feature on her story, dubbing her the Christmas Angel of St. Grace. Despite the attention, Sophia remained grounded. For her, the true reward was the knowledge that her small gesture had sparked a wave of kindness that would continue to grow. She decided to use some of the funds to start a program that provided holiday care packages for patients and staff every year. The rest she allocated to a fund that helped cover the costs for patients who couldn't afford their treatments. Months later, as spring blossoms began to replace the winter frost, Sophia was presented with an unexpected honor. The hospital board, moved by her story and dedication, awarded her a scholarship to pursue advanced training in patient care. The news left her speechless. Sophia had always dreamed of furthering her education, but had never had the means to do so. Years later, Sophia's simple act of kindness on a snowy Christmas Eve would be remembered as the catalyst for countless acts of generosity and goodwill. Her program, Sophia's Snowflakes, became a beloved tradition, bringing joy to patients and staff alike every holiday season. And every year, as she baked cookies in her tiny kitchen, Sophia marveled at how the smallest acts of love could lead to the most extraordinary gifts. The snow had melted, giving way to the freshness of spring, but Sophia's life had subtly changed since that magical Christmas. The outpouring of appreciation from her patients and colleagues had left a mark on her heart. She continued her work at St. Grace Hospital, her dedication to her patients unwavering, but she noticed something she hadn't before. Her small, daily acts of kindness now seemed to ripple outward, inspiring others to do the same. Her Sophia's Snowflakes Fund had grown steadily, thanks to the fundraiser Emily's parents had started. She'd used a portion of it to purchase cozy blankets and small radios for long-term patients, adding a touch of comfort to their hospital stays. But the remaining funds sat unused in the account, waiting for the right purpose. Sophia often caught herself daydreaming about how to use the money, but her modest nature made her cautious about making grand plans. One day in late March, a visitor arrived at the hospital. He was a man in his late 60s, with a weathered face and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He introduced himself as Daniel Finch, a retired architect and a former patient of St. Grace. Sophia remembered him vaguely. He had been admitted briefly the previous fall for heart complications. "I heard about what you did last Christmas," he said, sitting in the small break room where Sophia had just poured herself a cup of tea. "It's not often you find someone who goes out of their way like that. People talk about it, but they don't act on it. You did." Sophia smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "It was just cookies," she said, waving off the compliment. "I didn't expect anything to come of it." Daniel chuckled. "Well, just cookies seems to have stirred something in people. You've got a good heart, Nurse Andrews. I came here today to talk about an idea." Sophia tilted her head curiously as Daniel pulled a sketch pad from his bag. He opened it to reveal a series of drawings, a cozy room filled with bookshelves, plush chairs, and large windows that let in sunlight. "This hospital," Daniel began, gesturing toward the sketches, "has plenty of high-tech equipment and sterile rooms, but not enough warmth. I want to build a patient lounge, a place where people can feel human again, even when they're sick. A place to read, to relax, to sit with family. And I want you to be a part of it." Sophia was stunned. "Me? What could I do? I'm just a nurse." "You're the nurse," Daniel said firmly. "The one who sparked this whole thing. I've got the experience to design it, but I need someone who knows what patients really need. You're that person." The idea both excited and intimidated Sophia. She had never thought of herself as anything other than a caregiver, but Daniel's faith in her abilities was infectious. Over the next few weeks, they worked together in their free time, sketching ideas and gathering input from patients and staff. Sophia envisioned cozy blankets for the chairs, soft lighting, and even a small piano for visiting musicians to play. The project became a labor of love, and word of their plans spread throughout the hospital. By summer, the lounge project had taken on a life of its own. Donations poured in, not just from patients and their families, but also from local businesses that wanted to contribute. A furniture store donated plush sofas and chairs, a bookstore sent over dozens of novels, children's books, and magazines, and a local artist volunteered to paint a mural on one of the walls. Amidst the excitement, Sophia found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed in such a short time. She had always believed that her work as a nurse was enough, that caring for people one patient at a time was her calling. But now she saw that her kindness had created a ripple effect, inspiring an entire community to come together. Yet, life at the hospital wasn't without its challenges. Some days were hard, filled with patients who struggled with pain, loneliness, or fear. Sophia found herself stretched thin, balancing her nursing duties with the demands of the lounge project. She doubted herself at times, wondering if she was doing enough, or if she deserved the praise she had received. Her turning point came on a particularly difficult day in July. She had just finished a grueling double shift and was about to leave when a young man approached her in the hallway. He introduced himself as Josh, the son of one of her former patients, a man who had passed away in February. "I've been meaning to thank you," Josh said, his voice thick with emotion. "My dad used to talk about you all the time. You made his last days easier. And those cookies? He kept the note you wrote with his things. It meant the world to him." Sophia's eyes welled with tears as she realized the depth of the impact her simple gesture had made. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "I didn't know." Josh nodded, then hesitated. "I also heard about the lounge you're building. My dad would have loved something like that. I want to help. I own a flooring company. I could donate some wood for the floors, if that would help." Sophia was overwhelmed by his offer. "That would be amazing," she said, shaking his hand. "Thank you so much." As summer gave way to autumn, the lounge began to take shape. The mural, a sweeping landscape of mountains and meadows, covered an entire wall, and the furniture and books arrived in waves. Patients and staff alike stopped by to peek into the space, eager to see the transformation. Sophia felt a deep sense of pride every time she walked through the room, imagining the comfort it would bring to patients and their families. One crisp October morning, the lounge was finally complete. The hospital held a small ribbon-cutting ceremony, attended by staff, patients, and many of the people who had contributed to the project. As Sophia stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the people she had touched with her kindness, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Daniel handed her a pair of scissors to cut the ribbon, and as she did, the room erupted in applause. The sound echoed through the hospital, a testament to what a simple act of kindness could grow into. And though Sophia didn't know it yet, the lounge was just the beginning. In the days following the opening of the lounge, Sophia couldn't help but marvel at how the space transformed the hospital atmosphere. Patients who once sat isolated in their rooms now gathered in the lounge, flipping through books or enjoying quiet conversations with loved ones. Families with children were drawn to the kid-friendly corner, filled with colorful beanbags and shelves of picture books. Even staff members would occasionally steal a moment of solace during their breaks, their laughter and chatter weaving a gentle soundtrack through the room. Despite the joy it brought, Sophia found herself feeling restless. The lounge had been a milestone one she was proud of, but it also ignited a spark within her. For years, she had poured her energy into individual acts of care, one patient at a time. Now she wondered if she could do more, something broader, something that would leave a lasting legacy. Her thoughts were interrupted one afternoon when she received a call from the hospital administrator, Mr. Grant. He was a reserved man in his 50s, always impeccably dressed, and known for his no-nonsense demeanor. Sophia rarely interacted with him beyond routine meetings, so his call was unexpected. "Sophia," he began, his tone formal but warm, "I've been watching the impact you've had on this hospital, not just as a nurse, but as someone who brings people together. I think you're uniquely positioned to help us with a larger initiative." Sophia listened intently as Mr. Grant explained. The hospital had been exploring ways to better support low-income patients who often struggled to afford treatment. They wanted to create a fund that would cover not only medical bills but also associated costs, like transportation and lodging for families who had to travel far for care. "We'd like you to oversee the project," Mr. Grant said. "You'd continue your nursing duties, of course, but we'd also give you dedicated time and resources to manage the fund." Sophia's initial reaction was disbelief. "Me? I don't know anything about managing a fund." "You know how to inspire people," Mr. Grant countered. "You've already shown that. This fund needs more than spreadsheets and policies. It needs a heart. It needs someone like you." After much thought, Sophia agreed to take on the role. She named the initiative Grace in Action, a nod to the hospital's name and its mission of compassionate care. She began by reaching out to local businesses and community leaders, sharing stories of patients who had benefited from the generosity of others. Her efforts quickly gained momentum, and donations poured in, some small, others substantial, but all given with the same spirit of kindness that Sophia herself embodied. One donation, however, stood out. It came in the form of a letter from an anonymous benefactor. Inside was a check for $50,000, a sum that left Sophia speechless. The letter simply read, "For the nurse who brought light into the lives of so many. Keep doing what you do." Sophia couldn't help but wonder who had sent it. She asked around, but no one seemed to know. Ultimately, she decided not to dwell on the mystery. Instead, she poured the funds into the initiative, expanding its reach to cover additional services like mental health counseling and childcare for patients undergoing long treatments. As the fund grew, so did Sophia's sense of purpose. She worked tirelessly, balancing her nursing shifts with meetings, fundraising events, and countless hours spent crafting plans to make the initiative sustainable. It was exhausting work, but the rewards were immeasurable. Families who had once faced impossible choices between paying for treatment or keeping a roof over their heads now had hope. One such family was the Garcias. Maria Garcia, a single mother of 3, had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Her treatments were expensive, and the travel costs to St. Grace had nearly drained her savings. When Maria learned that Grace in Action would cover her expenses, she broke down in tears, clutching Sophia's hands and whispering, "You've saved my family." Moments like these kept Sophia going, even on the hardest days. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do. The lounge, the fun, they were incredible accomplishments, but they were reactive. Sophia wanted to create something proactive, something that would prevent people from needing help in the first place. Her answer came unexpectedly during a visit to a nearby school. Sophia had been invited to speak about health and wellness, and as she stood before a room full of eager children, she realized how much potential lay in educating people before they ever became patients. If she could teach communities about preventive care, nutrition, exercise, mental health awareness, she could help them avoid the kinds of crises that brought them to the hospital in the first place. Sophia approached Mr. Grant with her idea, a community outreach program that would partner with schools, churches, and local organizations to promote health education. She envisioned workshops, free screenings, and resource fairs that would empower people to take control of their well-being. To her surprise, Mr. Grant not only approved the idea but also offered additional funding to get it off the ground. "You've proven time and again that you can turn a vision into reality," he said. "I have no doubt you'll do the same with this." By the following spring, Sophia's outreach program was in full swing. She and a team of volunteers visited schools to teach children about nutrition and exercise, organized free health fairs in underserved neighborhoods, and even hosted cooking classes that focused on affordable, healthy meals. The program quickly became a model for other hospitals, and Sophia was invited to speak at conferences to share her experiences. Through it all, Sophia remained humble, insisting that the success of her projects was due to the collective efforts of countless people. But those who knew her best understood that it was her heart, her unshakable belief in the power of kindness that had inspired everything. As the years passed, Sophia's initiatives continued to thrive, touching countless lives. The hospital lounge became a sanctuary, the fund helped hundreds of families, and the outreach program transformed entire communities. Sophia never forgot the simple act that had started it all, a batch of Christmas cookies, baked with love and given without expectation. And every Christmas, as she walked through the halls of St. Grace Hospital, she carried a box of cookies, just as she had on that fateful Christmas Eve. It was her way of honoring the journey that had brought her here and of reminding everyone, herself included, that the smallest acts of kindness could lead to the most extraordinary gifts. The winter chill returned to St. Grace Hospital as another holiday season approached, blanketing the city in frost and glittering lights. Sophia Andrews, now a name well known in her community and beyond, found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she'd experienced since that first Christmas Eve of kindness. What had started as a small gesture, a cart full of cookies, had transformed into initiatives that changed lives every single day. Sophia had grown too. The shy, self-effacing nurse, who once doubted her ability to make a difference, was now a confident leader and a beloved figure in the hospital. She had taken on many new roles over the years, but her heart remained with her patients. No matter how busy her schedule became, she always made time to sit at a bedside, hold a hand, or listen to someone's fears. It was those moments, she often thought, that anchored her in the whirlwind of progress and success. One morning, just weeks before Christmas, Sophia received an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was warm and familiar. It was Daniel Finch, the retired architect who had helped her design the hospital lounge years earlier. His voice carried a hint of excitement. "Sophia," he said, "I have a surprise for you. Can you meet me at the hospital lounge tomorrow morning?" Curious, Sophia agreed. She couldn't imagine what Daniel had planned, but she trusted him implicitly. The next day, she arrived at the lounge to find it bustling with activity. Patients, staff, and even members of the community were gathered, their faces alight with anticipation. In the center of the room stood Daniel, holding an envelope and wearing a grin that made him look years younger. "What's going on?" Sophia asked, laughing as she took in the festive atmosphere. "This," Daniel said, handing her the envelope, "is something I've been working on for a while. Consider it a thank you for everything you've done for me, for this hospital, and for everyone you've touched." Sophia opened the envelope, her hands trembling slightly. Inside was a letter from a local foundation, announcing that Sophia's outreach program had been selected as the recipient of a $100,000 grant. The money would allow the program to expand into neighboring communities, reaching thousands more people with education and resources. Sophia's breath caught as she read the letter. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at Daniel. "This is incredible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to thank you." "You've already done that," Daniel replied. "This is just the beginning." The grant marked a new chapter for Sophia's work. With the additional funds, she and her team launched new initiatives, including mobile health clinics that traveled to rural areas, providing care to those who couldn't reach the hospital. They partnered with local schools to create after-school programs focused on physical and mental health, and they developed an online platform to make their resources accessible to even more people. Sophia threw herself into these projects with her usual energy and passion, but she never lost sight of the small moments that mattered most. She still baked cookies every Christmas, delivering them to patients and staff with the same warmth that had sparked her journey. And every time she saw someone smile, whether it was a child learning to make a healthy snack or a patient finding comfort in the hospital lounge, she felt the same sense of fulfillment she had on that first Christmas Eve. One snowy evening, just days before Christmas, Sophia found herself walking through the city, the twinkling lights reflecting off the snow-covered streets. She carried a box of cookies, as she always did during the holidays, planning to deliver them to a local shelter. As she walked, she thought about all the people who had supported her over the years, the patients, colleagues, and community members who had believed in her vision and helped bring it to life. Lost in thought, Sophia almost didn't notice the figure sitting on a bench near the park. It was an older woman, bundled in a worn coat, her hands clasped tightly around a small cup of coffee. Something about the woman's posture, the way she seemed both weary and proud, caught Sophia's attention. She approached cautiously, her nurse's instinct kicking in. "Excuse me," Sophia said softly. "Are you all right? Can I help you with anything?" The woman looked up, her eyes tired but kind. "I'm fine, dear," she said, "just resting for a moment." Sophia hesitated, then held out the box of cookies. "Would you like one? They're homemade." The woman's face softened as she accepted the offer. She took a bite, her expression brightening. "These are wonderful," she said. "Thank you." They sat together for a few minutes, talking about the weather and the holidays. Sophia learned that the woman's name was Margaret and that she had recently fallen on hard times. She was staying at a nearby shelter, trying to get back on her feet. As they parted ways, Sophia felt a familiar warmth in her chest, the quiet joy of making someone's day a little brighter. It reminded her why she had started this journey in the first place and why she would continue it for as long as she could. That Christmas Eve, as Sophia stood by the window of her apartment, watching the snow fall, she thought about all the gifts she had received over the years. They weren't just the grants or the accolades, they were the moments of connection, the lives she had touched, and the people who had touched hers in return. And she realized something she had always known deep down: the greatest gift of all was love given freely, without expectation, and returned in ways she could never have imagined. By the time the new year rolled around, Sophia's efforts had blossomed far beyond what she ever imagined. The Grace in Action initiative was thriving. Her mobile health clinics were receiving widespread praise, and schools across the region were asking to collaborate on health education programs. The hospital lounge she'd helped create had even been featured in a national magazine, highlighting it as a model for patient-centered care. Despite her growing list of accomplishments, Sophia remained deeply humble. She continued her nursing shifts at St. Grace, often staying late to comfort anxious patients or assist a struggling colleague. To Sophia, the work itself was the reward, being present for people in their most vulnerable moments, providing not just medical care but also compassion. But even as she focused on others, Sophia was beginning to face a personal crossroads. Her success had attracted attention, and several organizations had approached her with offers. Some wanted her to take on leadership roles in their hospitals, others proposed expanding her outreach programs into other states. While the opportunities were exciting, they also made Sophia uneasy. She loved her work at St. Grace and couldn't imagine leaving the place that had become her second home. Yet, a part of her wondered if she was holding herself back by staying. One crisp January morning, as Sophia was preparing for her shift, she received a call that changed everything. It was from a woman named Ellen Grant, the director of a renowned global health foundation. Ellen explained that she had followed Sophia's story for years and was deeply impressed by her work. We're launching a new initiative, Ellen said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. It's focused on bringing holistic, community-based healthcare to underserved areas worldwide. We want you to lead it. Sophia's heart raced. The opportunity was enormous, an international platform to expand her work and help countless more people. But it was also daunting. Leaving St. Grace, even temporarily, felt almost unthinkable. I'm honored, Sophia said cautiously. But I'm not sure I'm the right person for something big. You're exactly the right person, Ellen replied firmly. Your work proves that real change starts with empathy and understanding. That's what we need. You don't have to decide right away, but I hope you'll consider it. For weeks, Sophia wrestled with the decision. She confided in her closest friends and colleagues, seeking their advice. Some encouraged her to take the leap, insisting that she could make an even greater impact on a global scale. Others urged her to stay, pointing out how much she had already achieved at St. Grace. Ultimately, it was a conversation with Daniel Finch that gave her clarity. They met for coffee in the hospital lounge, a space that now felt like a second home to both of them. Do you remember what you told me when we started working on this lounge? Daniel asked, gesturing around the room. You said you wanted to create something that would outlive you, something that would keep giving, even after you were gone. This opportunity sounds like another way to do that. Sophia nodded, her eyes thoughtful. But what if I leave here and fail? What if I can't make the same impact somewhere else? Daniel smiled. Sophia, failure isn't in your nature. And even if things don't go as planned, the important thing is that you try. The world needs people like you, and you're capable of more than you realize. With Daniel's words echoing in her mind, Sophia made her decision. She accepted the foundation's offer but negotiated a part-time arrangement that allowed her to remain connected to St. Grace. She would spend 6 months each year working on the global initiative and the other 6 continuing her nursing duties and overseeing her local programs. The transition was challenging at first. Sophia traveled to regions she had only read about: small villages in Africa, rural communities in South America, and bustling urban centers in Asia. Each place presented unique challenges, but Sophia approached them with the same empathy and determination that had guided her work at St. Grace. She built relationships with local health workers, learning from their expertise and adapting her programs to meet the needs of each community. She helped establish mobile clinics, train local staff, and develop culturally sensitive health education materials. Along the way, she encountered incredible stories of resilience and hope, stories that reminded her why she had chosen this path. Back home, the impact of Sophia's work continued to grow. Grace in Action expanded into neighboring states, and the outreach program reached tens of thousands of people annually. The hospital lounge became a beloved fixture at St. Grace, inspiring similar spaces in hospitals across the country. On one of her rare days off, Sophia received a package in the mail. Inside was a beautifully bound book titled A Ripple of Kindness: The Story of Sophia Andrews. It had been compiled by her colleagues, patients, and friends, filled with letters, photographs, and anecdotes from people whose lives she had touched. The book was a testament to the extraordinary ripple effect of her simple act of baking cookies all those years ago. Sophia spent hours reading through it, laughing and crying as she revisited the memories. One letter, written by Emily, the little girl who had inspired the first fundraiser, stood out. Dear Nurse Sophia, you probably don't remember me, but I'll never forget you. I was just a kid when you brought me that gingerbread man on Christmas Eve. It was such a small thing, but it made me feel so loved at a time when I was scared and lonely. Now I'm studying to become a nurse because I want to make people feel the way you made me feel. Thank you for showing me what kindness looks like. With love, Emily. Sophia held the letter to her chest, her heart full. She thought about how far she had come and how many lives had been changed by that first, seemingly insignificant act of kindness. As the years went on, Sophia continued to split her time between her local and global work. She became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story and inspiring others to believe in the power of small actions. But no matter how far she traveled or how much she accomplished, Sophia never stopped baking cookies every Christmas. Because she knew, better than anyone, that even the smallest acts of love could grow into something extraordinary. And every holiday season, as she handed out those cookies, whether to patients at St. Grace, children in a remote village, or strangers on a snowy city bench, she carried with her the same message. Kindness changes everything.